So for people that haven't been on these calls before, Andrea, I think this is your first one. What we tend to do is record the meeting, and also then Richard's team then transcribes it as well. So we end up with a narrative as well. And we've been doing that now for the last 2 or 3 years. So we've got literally a couple of hundred recordings on different topics, which I think is something that we're now looking to see how we can make those available. So they're all available on the BIM4Housing website. So Gareth, where are you from?
So based down in South Wales. I've got a company, FireRight UK Limited. I'm the FES chairman for Wales, so I do the apprenticeships. We deliver them through a training academy. I'm director of Fire Industry Training Academy, and I sit on the FSA committee.
Excellent, cool. Well, that's exactly the sort of expertise that we need in this group. One of the things that we've been looking at here is how we can support because the advisory group there is really there to support the activities that are carried out in development, design, construction, manufacturing, and operations. That's the way we look at it. So they may be project managers or cost managers and things like that. But what we're seeing increasingly is fire engineers, people like yourselves with expertise in that sort of area, but also things like building control. So we've got quite a number of building control professionals now involved in BIM4Housing. And really what we're trying to do is find the best sort of way that we can bring that expertise together and make it available to the rest of the BIM4Housing groups. I'm just wondering, actually, Sasha, you're from Ventro, aren't you?
Yeah, George. We met previously. Well, we've met a few times. You sent me over this BIM4Housing link, I think, originally when we met back in, gonna say October, November. So I've been trying to come on them when you guys have them, if and when, and if there's anything we could do to support, or if there's any insights or anything like that we could potentially use as well to support in the industry. That's why I'm on here, really. But nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Now we had a meeting this morning with the team that are pulling together a Miro board of activities that we are sort of setting out what the requirements are under the new legislation, and we've been working through that, and we're Jarek, who's actually managing that, has offered to come in on this meeting for sort of 10 minutes and just show us where we're at with that. So I think that's probably a worthwhile thing for us to consider. Could I just ask? I mean, basically, I think I need to hand over to Richard and Debbie. But yeah, sorry for. Do you want to pick up on that, Richard?
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. As George said, Jarek will be coming in at some point for 10-15 minutes to run you through the Miro board. It's got a lot of input from some work that a guy called Daz has put in. He runs our design group. He's an architect. George, I think possibly it's worth starting from the top, because we've got kind of an agenda, haven't we, that we sent out. Just have you got that? You put that up? Because I think some of this you're going to have to explain rather than me. This is what you call a pregnant pause.
Was this for me? Sorry, Richard. I was.
No. I'm waiting for just to put the agenda up.
Yeah.
So we can work our way through. There we go. So the purpose of the meeting is to look at key questions and discuss forming a subgroup for showing knowledge and standardization. I think we'll. Do you want to say anything more on that, George, or have we kind of got that, had that covered?
No, I don't think so. So let me. What I was going to say is that Debbie is one of the leaders of this particular group, or probably the leader of this group. And one of the things Debbie's expertise in is incompetence. Competence, not incompetence, by the way, Debbie.
Sorry, I'm having some technical problems. I've had to kill my camera. I can't. Yeah.
No problem.
Apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've been covering over the last few weeks is, the last couple of sessions was how can we have a methodology of assessing and improving competence, which Debbie can explain some of the work that we've been doing in there a bit later. But what I think that I've been noticing is the lack of knowledge in the industry, even with subject matter experts, about some of the new legislation that's coming through, and also how to interpret it. You know, for example, what's the status of projects where they're going under transitional arrangements? What's the difference between what's required under the Building Safety Act and what's required for the Fire Safety Act? Because a lot of the things like being able to hold or provide and collect all the Regulation 38 information is something that isn't specifically for the Building Safety Act. It's the fire safety orders, and Paul White is a subject matter expert in that area. But one of the challenges, I think, is that nobody knows everything. There's a lot of questions being asked, and I suspect there's a lot of people that are providing advice who don't know all the answers, and therefore they could be very easily giving clients the wrong advice. But that's not because those people aren't keen to provide the right advice. It's just there is no source of how to get that information. So people can read the new acts and the provisions and the guidance, and it can be interpreted in all sorts of different ways. And the regulator is not being explicit in terms of what is and isn't approved. And so what we're thinking is it would be an interesting thing to have within the advisory group a group of subject matter experts who are able to talk to each other and share experiences in a, if you like, a safe space. Because if you are an expert, you probably don't want to be seen to be asking other people what the answers are. But therefore, you probably, if there's an aligned area, Paul, for example, Paul White, you've got a lot of experience on the HVAC area, haven't you, Paul? And Paul's, what I think, as far as dampers and smoke control and things like that, fire dampers and the like, I think there are a few people that know much more than Paul does. But the context of that in relation to, for example, firewalls and penetration seals, for example, that's something that he'd probably talk to one of the other experts that we brought together in BIM4Housing. So what we're thinking is that we could have a community, a subgroup that is able to discuss these things and come up with some standardized and consistent answers for client organizations. So I wanted to table that to see if that's the sort of thing that we'd be interested in pursuing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, nobody likes to admit they don't know something, do they? But when you're actually an advisor on a specific subject, it's you'd have to have a death wish, wouldn't you, in a way? But at the same time, I mean, we've got a list there of questions on part two, on number 2 there. These are the key questions that are particularly relevant right now. And a lot from the meetings we've had over the last couple of months, certainly people are going outside. They're outsourcing, resourcing outside of their own organizations to get the expertise in to get that advice, and that's you guys. So how are you getting the knowledge, and how are you advising people to do that? I'm throwing that as a question to the floor.
Well, in terms of competency bits and pieces, I'm doing a lot of work now, sub of the working group under, oh golly, I always forget the number, working group 2 from the Grenfell situation, and we this is now the sector skills group has now exploded this, and we've had a few meetings recently, and I'm involved in the group. You wouldn't be surprised to hear about dampers, but in terms of smoke control, sorry, that's dampers and ductwork. But in terms of smoke control, we still don't have anything because we haven't actually managed to get NOSes in place, National Occupational Standards. However,
so how do you manage, Paul, when you've got a client and they say, "What shall I do?" How do you manage? What do you say?
Well, I explain to them at the moment it's not clear. I have to admit that the route is not clear, and what I'm trying to do, I have another part of a separate business that I'm looking at providing training and assessment, and we are having to look at how we might initially provide a custom qualification, and we're also looking at working with one of the institutions to look at seeing if we can develop something for some sort of qualification for a smoke control designer.
But to do that, you'd have to know what you're training them in, wouldn't you? So you still have to have the answer yourself to be able to train.
Well, yeah, but I mean, so that's the point. I mean, I do have the answers in the areas that I work, because if I didn't, I wouldn't even set out about it. But I mean, in terms of things like smoke control, I thought I knew what I was talking about, but every time we talk about it, we get new nuances, and you find things on sites where you just think this is obvious training material, because this couldn't be much more wrong. Which is a horrible thing to say, but I cannot go to a site and find things that are not. I always find something that's wrong, and in some cases it's not just a little thing that's wrong. And I think I brought it up in one of these areas before. It's where does refurb become redesign? Because if you replace like for like, that's okay, but some of these buildings are so old now that and people have put into place dangerous things that essentially they can't just replace them with the right thing, because is this now a design change? And this is something that I don't know the answer to. But of course, if it appears to be a design change, then it's much more expensive, because you've got to get a designer in. You've got to get building control involved. If it's an apartment block that's over 4 or 5 stories, we're into all that. And we're not talking about processes that are easy, but in theory now, on a vent, a smoke vent that goes to outside, that now needs to be it's a harmonized product. It must be CE marked. But of course, if you swap out something that wasn't CE marked and put this in, then is that a design change? And this isn't clear. And if you were to get building control involved, they'd probably say it was, because you're using a new product.
Yeah.
In theory, because you can't, if you bought exactly the same window actuator and put it on, I think that would be acceptable. But if you buy a different actuator and put it on, it becomes not acceptable, because those two things should now have been tested as an assembly.
Sure.
And these are only little nuances that probably only myself and a few other people know, but I don't know what to advise. I just say, well, you need to speak to a designer, because whilst I probably am a designer, I can't afford the insurance to do design work.
Yeah,
What about anybody else? How are
challenge.
you doing? How are you advising your clients when things are so unclear? Sasha?
So it depends. Like the sorry, I forgot the gentleman that was just speaking his name.
Paul.
It's like what Paul says. It's about transparency. We have a technical department that do advising. It's about clarity. Should we need to change something because of the certification of it, and it necessarily is dangerous at this time, or it's come up on a report and we're looking at additional options and things like that. It's about getting all the relevant people, so building controls, sometimes local authorities, depending on the building's listings and things like that. We're just quite clear whether it's a certified fixed or whether it's a betterment fix and things like that. But it is difficult. We spend a lot of time in the industry trying to do free knowledge sharing events, and that's how we try and be sharing all this wider knowledge. And we get different technical people on. I know that George came on and has done a couple of events. I think you've got one coming up with Fantech, I want to say, George, as well.
That's right. Yeah, next week. Yeah.
So in terms of us, that's how we do it. It's just about that understanding, about backing with what you're saying as well. So a client can say, yes, that's very well, but can you not just do this? And unfortunately, if we don't think that's the right way, we won't do it, and we'll provide them the evidence. It's all about the data sheets and the technical side of things as well. So yeah, it is difficult, but we try to.
So do you think it would be a good idea for us to do a subgroup from this group, and as George said, get a sort of a safe environment where people can be totally open with each other? And
I think they're important. I mean, like you said, a lot of people sometimes don't want to raise something because they feel like maybe they're under pressure, and all these regulations and all these changes have necessarily opened quite a grey area, haven't they? So it's about having that safe space. I mean, we do run individual sessions with our clients as well, where they can just speak to the technical director openly, and normally that's done at the pre-stage. So they come to us with a problem, we'll go and assess, and we'll come up with multiple solutions and tell them which one's which. Like, for example, we've got some AOV replacements coming up with a client of ours, but we have several fixes as an option for them. We've got the one that we would necessarily do more, which is more certified, but that was still a group discussion. We went to site, we had just an open discussion. I think a forum like that is great. Having an avenue where people know where they can go for the answers. And know they're not going to be judged for them.
I think that's I think we certainly. Sorry, George, I'm interrupting you.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we can establish a bit of a network of relationships where, in fact, I think Paul would agree that the work Paul's been involved for the last couple of years on a lot of these sessions, but I think you've met a lot of people, haven't you, Paul, who, if, for example, he wanted to know something about, compartment walls or whatever. We've now got, you know, people from Canalf and specialists who are installing compartment walls. You know, so we've got that community that we can then build on. I mean, what I'm, you know, in terms of that list there, I'm hearing all the time is my building in scope? And in many cases, what people are thinking of is just the whether it's an HRB. But I think Gareth would agree that the majority of the new aspects of the legislation are actually driven by the Fire Safety Act, and that's relevant to all buildings. So I think you know, a lot of the things that are required when we've also got lawyers involved in BIM4Housing, and they've said to us, well, it's not a matter of whether it's an HRB or not. It's a matter of, have you followed building regulations? Because that's the thing that's going to catch you out. Yes, the regulator, the HRBs, are going to be more scrutinised, and you've got to produce the safety case reports, but you've got to do the job properly anyway.
Absolutely.
Sorry, someone's got the hand
Nicholas.
Yeah, rather than mining the experts and undermining the experts when they get it wrong, would the better thing to do be to produce a tree diagram of the documentation that's available, starting with the legislation and then the supporting stuff going down, so that if people want to get the right opinion, they can see what the hierarchy of documents are that are available. You know, they're just, many of them are listed here, but if they were in a tree that said there are two things, you know, the primary legislation is this, and that the regulations approved documents below it are those, and below that there is this guidance and so on, then people will be able to see what the definitive answers, where the definitive answers come from. And lower down the tree, there is obviously other people who are producing summaries and digests, and those could go in the tree. So rather than trying to fix the experts, to produce something that is actually a useful map through the maze of documents that we're meant to be responding to.
Absolutely, I think that's a really, really good idea. What we tend to be doing in BIM4Housing is further down the tree, I think, and that's giving rather more specific detail to all aspects. George, do you want to say something on that?
Yeah.
Sorry, could I just jump in, George?
Oh, sorry, Debbie. Yeah,
I'm picking up on Nick's point. Nick, in the chat here, I went to Future Build not last week, the week before, and there was the BIM Alliance stuff and some other people, and I just put in the chat here, this is a Miro board of someone who's tried to do that with the legislation, primary and secondary. Yes, if people want to have a look. Yes, so other people are doing this. Yes, I entirely agree with you. I think it's the right approach. Sorry to jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well that that's what we're going to get. We've already started down that track, Nick, and in fact, in a few minutes, I'll invite Yarrick on, who's actually been leading that for us. So we've got a number of people now that have been inputting to a Miro board about that. Sorry, yes. John Cumberledge. You had your hand up. John?
Apologies, I'm in the car and I couldn't take myself off mute. No, I lowered my hand because I was just going to point you towards the Miro board that already existed, that I think one Creative Environments have done, but I think that must be in the chat now. I won't check because I'm on the M6, so yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's fine. Where are you from, John?
Sorry, so I'm from a company called C3. So I am an approved inspector. So I'm coming from the building regulations regulator side.
Excellent. Well, so what we were just saying there, I don't know if you heard what I said earlier, but your expertise, for example, is very detailed in terms of the building regs and that side of things. And we've got other people who have got really deep experience in fire engineering, for example. So what we're proposing is that there could be a group who are able to bounce off each other, to learn from each other, and tackle some of the problems that are perhaps slightly, when you're asked a question that is perhaps slightly outside of the remit of what your expertise is, to be able to pull that together. Would that make sense to you?
It does, yes. I think we, as an industry and building control, are going through a little bit of an existential crisis as to what does our job look like in the future. I'm on the way at the moment to an architect in Manchester to give a presentation about duty holder requirements, but there's still a hell of a lot of grey areas, and I don't have all the answers, and we're having to go through this process at the moment. So yeah, more than happy to collaborate on something. Yeah,
That'd be great. I mean, one of the things I was asked yesterday was that if, for example, you're brought in as an improved inspector for a project that's not an HRB, obviously, if you discover something that you don't think is right, presumably your sanction would be to withhold the approval. Is that right?
yeah, absolutely. So there's various enforcement tools that we've got, but essentially, if something wasn't right, there's still the power to serve, not for me as an approved inspector, but for me to serve a contravention notice and pass it back to a local authority, and stop notices and compliance notices, similar powers to the BSR for those to be used on a scheme. So there's some quite powerful enforcement tools that have been brought in as part of the amendments to the regulations and the BSA, really.
Cool. Okay. I think that certainly helps. I'm just trying to get Jarek involved. So
Okay, anybody else? Who have we got that we haven't picked on yet?
I'll join in. Jack Dearlove, nice to meet everybody on the call today.
Hi, Jack.
Nice to meet you. Great conversation so far. I'm joining today. George invited me to join, and I think so far it's brilliant conversation. So really enjoying it. Yeah. So I in my most recent role was the group digital information director for ISG, and was responsible for the golden thread. It was a massive challenge, and we really struggled with grappling to understand what our requirements were. We heavily relied, as a main contractor, we heavily relied on our design partners to inform us as to what the right thing to do was and whether a building fell into the relevance. That was a big challenge, and I definitely felt that even with getting expert advice from companies like Soccertech and others, we definitely felt like we were fumbling in the dark in terms of understanding what was required on projects, which projects fell into a relevant building in terms of high-rise buildings, and also what was our fundamental requirement in terms of the Fire Safety Act on all of our projects. So I definitely think that the idea of having a group of people that can come together to share experience, ideas and knowledge freely and ask questions as well in a safe place would be absolutely phenomenal. And like what John's doing today, which is brilliant, going around sharing expertise to specific companies is brilliant, and I'd love to see more of that. But it'd be brilliant to have a group where we can share the knowledge, and also providing that space to learn and grow. But ultimately, we all want to deliver what's required of us, and that's the bit that we, in all honesty, I think the industry is struggling with at large.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're in favour of the group, the new group, then, Jack?
Definitely. And I've just been checking out
Excellent.
the Miro board, which is a phenomenal piece of work. And I think that quite quickly, even without diving into the Miro board specifically, that quite quickly articulates the problem. That you can see all of the connections and the links going across between each one of the standards and the following statutes. And that quite, without even being an expert in the space, you can quite quickly see how difficult it is to understand when you've got to know all those different connections and the different statutes. I mean, even I was talking to George because I was obviously following, as I was looking after the golden thread, I was following the Building Safety Act, but then there was statutes that were being released, one as recent as January, which are great, and they give you much more insight and understanding of what you're meant to do. But however, you've got to keep up and keep, if you like, abreast of all the new statutes and extra pieces that are coming out as they do. So something like that, which Nick alluded to, but also this Miro board seems to be doing a fantastic job of, something like that would be massively helpful as well.
But as you say, it's got to be something that is updatable on an ongoing basis, because things are changing all the time, and and people's knowledge and understanding, and to some extent interpretation, is changing all the time.
Correct. And they always say a legal act is only as good as the last case that tested it. We haven't had that. We haven't had those tests just yet, other than obviously Grenfell being the precursor to this. Because so I was working closely with the legal team in ISG, and that was one of the things. They were like, "Well, we just don't know what we're meant to be exactly doing because it hasn't been tested yet." So that's going to be quite interesting when those tests do come along.
Absolutely. Here's Jarek.
How are we doing?
The man at the moment. There he is. Jarek, do you want to do your stuff?
Yeah, let's do it. Well done.
So this is an initiative that's been led by the design group within BIM4Housing. But Jarek's created this, and it's Jarek and largely Daz from David Miller Architects that have been inputting to it. But we've had quite a lot of input from some other people as well, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what you can see now on the screen, that's all the comments we received from people. All of this is tracked, so there will be a reference, and we obviously will make sure everyone's input is recognized. And all the comments you can make will be really helpful. So if you've got something like this, that means it has been resolved. And then if it's open, basically it's open, and when you click on the comment, you can add to it and see what it is and so on. And so you understand what has happened so far. Let me just describe. So Daz started it, as George said. Sorry for my voice. I was on a skiing trip and I lost it a little bit.
Yeah.
So Daz created a document. We then made a few revisions and had this idea to create like a process map, and we're doing it in Miro. So George will share with you the link. You can then add your comments. You don't need to be logged in, depends on which link you use. So this is very much work in progress. I just today added a key following one of the comments of the process map symbols itself. And there's a supplementary information. One of the comment was from Darren to move this aside and then we do something about it. I have an idea that we may want to break some of this into parts. So for
Can you
example,
zoom into it a little bit more, Jarek?
Yeah, can you see it?
That's it. That's better. Thank you.
Sorry, let me just check something. 1 second. Okay, so we could break this into parts. We'll see how much it will grow. If we can keep it as a one workflow, then that would be good. But we could also break it into parts, so it's maybe more. It could be then used for specific purpose. So this part, what you see on the screen now, is the first stage of checking whether your building falls into the requirements of high-rise or high-risk buildings. So there's a few comments. There's 2 comments outstanding. actually this is resolved, but I'm asking Joe to comment whether he thinks this is now resolved. Basically, in the workflow, in the process, I had a question yes, or answer to this question was yes, which was incorrect, because this is inclusive gate. You've got basically two options, two questions, which both can be answered yes. So I've changed that. If you go through it and see if there's any errors, if you can comment. Now, Darren here asked to add action to notify the client, which I just did now, added that, and I'm asking him whether he's happy or if you have any more comments. So the idea is we built really robust, informative process map, which then can guide us all. And then the next step is going into building regulations, fire safety, building act, and so on, regulators. There's a lot of work done. There's a few comments still open. I didn't see that one. Few resolved. What this represents, this big circle, by the way, it represents that all of this process needs to be part of the golden thread of information. And obviously this is very complex because many different parties are involved. Some of it beyond our control, but they will have their own system, and they have to have the system to basically track this golden thread of information. So all of this forms, it sits in it. Then this part represents a project, or after the project has been completed, the operation part of the asset as per ISO 19650. Well, I've checked it in because I believe it is relevant. So we've got various sorts of information. There's a update log, and yeah, and also, by the way, you've got hyperlinks to relevant information throughout this diagram. So if you click on it, it will bring you to relevant part of the government information or any other information. Same like here, you will have as you can see, if you have that symbol, you will have a hyperlink to the guidance or the source of the information and further guidance, which is quite nice because it becomes kind of live.
So, Jarek, Nicholas was saying a little bit earlier that it would be good to have a tree of what's actually out there, starting at the top of the tree with the act and then the guidance and secondary guidance and moving down. So what you've done here should cover that, shouldn't it?
It kind of does. It is kind of a tree.
Yeah.
It starts with top down, but it's not complete. It's work in progress. And,
Sure.
And it may look completely different when we finish, unless everyone likes the way it is. So
I think
it's never going to be finished, is it? It's always going to be a work in progress. There's an edge to the beast, isn't it?
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to compare this one, Jarek, to the one I put in the Miro board, yes, which is another group that've done something that is it's similar, but I quite like the process flow in this, and you know, I think going back to the point that I can't remember which gentleman it was who was Jack, you know, about how do we enable people understand what those critical requirements are, yes, that they're responsible for, yeah, and I think things like an outcome which is notify a client, is that enough? You know, does a client need to respond? You know, because you can notify a client, but they don't do anything with it, or they don't understand it. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. By the way, Debbie, did you say there is another mind map somewhere on the Miro?
Yes, there's another mind map. I've just put it in chat. Yes. It was presented in Future Build a week or so ago, yes, and they want people to look and use it. If you want the contact, I can't remember his name, it's not on the top of my head, I can facilitate that, Jarek, yes. So
yes,
it may
please.
be that, you know, that
perhaps we could
it's
merge
always
them.
good to have something to compare to, yes.
Or merge it, or yeah.
Or merge, yes.
If it can work together, that'd be easier than just, you know, the same group of people working on two different mind maps if we are doing the same thing.
Yeah. I'll take it as an action to contact him, yes, and then we can get in touch, yeah.
Yeah, I know him very well. If
Okay, well then
Debbie,
you might
so
be better. I don't know him. I just, I approached him and said, can we leverage this in what we're doing? Yes, and he said
yeah,
yes. Yeah.
Nicholas?
It's Jason Whittle, by the way.
Sorry.
I don't know if you know Jason,
Oh,
but
correct.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Nicholas,
Yeah.
your hand's up.
Yes.
What do you think?
I just wanted, having seen both mirrors quickly, one is a hierarchy of documents and their what takes precedence over what, and this is a decision tree. And I just want to caution against the idea of merging things just because they're both on Miro.
Yeah,
and
good point.
actually, the right, well, a thing that could be done with this once it's stabilized, and I know it's never finished, but once it's stable, then rather than existing in Miro board, if it existed as a BPMN diagram, then it could become an interactive set of questions. You start at the top and answer the questions, and it talks you through it rather than having to experience all these notations and so on. So it doesn't have to exist as this massive diagram. It could exist as an interactive tool, which would hide
yeah,
the detail,
definitely.
and you just answer the questions needed to get through the tree. So I don't know if that's a more attractive solution.
Yeah, that was our goal. So as I said, it's just a start, and once we have enough information and comments, and we know this is 100% right and robust, we can then simplify and make it more useful. So I just use the opportunity that I'm still talking, just to give you an idea. For example, you can please ask whatever, put any comments or questions you may have, because, for example, I found this one interesting. How people know if the regs have been changed, how others are dealing with this. I suspect someone in the business is tasked with that. That's a quite good question. So if that person, Joe, is asking for more feedback, that would be good to know as well. There's a few more others like this one is open. Really, if you could just get in and read that, and whatever comments you may have, I'm sure they'll be valuable.
Yeah, so obviously we're like it, we want as many people as possible to engage with this, because I was with a client last week, and we've been working on a large development with them for probably 18 months now, and there are 8 blocks being developed. Now, when they started, they weren't in the HRB because they'd started before the new timings came in. But there was a question then. Some of the blocks they'd not started, and in fact they're just starting. So therefore they've missed the I think it's the October deadline for when they should have been started. But it wasn't clear as to whether they were or not going to be part of the regulator, because it's also there's the transitional arrangements which are in place accordingly. So it was only when we checked it out with some people that we've identified that of the 8 blocks, 2 of them are going to be under having to go through the gateways. But even if they're not going through the gateways, you've still got to be collecting the information. And that's the sort of expertise that, for example, somebody like John Cumberledge would be able to bring in. But it's not desperately clear. And certainly the developer and the main contractor, they didn't know. They were a major organization, but they were having to ask the questions. Good. Any other comments on this? We'll let Jarek go because I know he's very busy. Thanks very much, Jerry.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
Jerry.
No worries. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers, mate.
So Gareth, as a specialist on the fire side of things, is this the sort of thing that you'd find useful also?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions and a lack of understanding right from the start to the finish. You know, we mentioned earlier the golden thread of information. I think that's critical. You know, your Reg 38 fire strategy is your starting point, and then everything going through. But I feel that you know, with what's being discussed, what's being proposed, it's all going in the right direction. Obviously, the working groups are setting out what competency looks like for the people working in obviously the wider construction industry, but also then the maintenance of the systems thereafter. So, yeah, a big step in the right direction. I feel once that, you know, they lay out what the competency of each area looks like, everyone's going to be in a far better place. I feel, you know, we there's still a lack of understanding when we're doing the design of buildings. You know, so I know there's architects on this call, and it'd be interesting to hear some of their opinions on this, because when we're doing a Reg 38 strategies, and I'm coming from quite a unique position. So although my background is fire detection and alarms, and that's where I sit within the I suppose the industry on different committees and advisory bodies. But as a company with FireRight UK and MD, then we've got a consultancy division. So we look at all of this from fire risk assessment. We've got a passive division, so we're looking at compartmentation, fire door. So I've got a good, broad, holistic understanding across certainly the fire industry anyway. But then that sort of ties in with the with building control and how we work there. So yeah, it's well, what I've just seen is definitely useful, and you see people within residential social landlords, they've got titles of compliance, facilities managers, etc. And when you actually dig and not too deep beneath the surface, then all of these questions are raised, and they want to put it back on a specialist like ourselves to actually hold it and guide it through, which I guess in essence is what we're there for. But you know, that that organogram that we just seen, you know, perfectly illustrates where you look, and it is a minefield with all the legislation. So yeah, good positive stuff.
Absolutely. I want to go quickly to Debbie because I know she's short of time.
Yeah. I just wanted to raise the point that I'm well aware of what's going on around all the competency frameworks, but a lot of mistakes are being made in these new frameworks that are being built at the moment. They're all being done manually in Excel sheets and Word documents, but I am in the process at the moment of making the NOS machine readable. We've made IFATE occupational standards machine readable, and it looks like we may get the right incumbent to move to have something that is a sort of knowledge base for all of these competence frameworks, which we can then link to this knowledge base, yes, as
Excellent,
we build it
brilliant.
out, yes. So because, you know, these things need to tie together, yes, and we need traceability.
Absolutely.
So just
absolutely. So, sorry, George, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's obviously some new people on the call, and therefore I wondered whether it's worth me just taking a couple of minutes to explain what we've got in BIM4Housing. You know, the sort of approach that we take. Would that
very
make
much so?
sense?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Bear with me a second. Yeah, so the methodology that we've followed.
Are you sharing?
I'm just about to. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we've been running roundtable workshops, and a lot of this is to drill down into the detail about what information a subject matter expert, you know, like Gareth or Paul would suggest for what information do we need to know about AOVs or cavity barriers or whatever, because really that's the critical thing. So this is the sort of approach that we've taken. We've looked at the individual asset types, and we've tried to break that down so that people that are non-experts can understand that a fire door or a fire door set is actually an assembly of a number of critical items, each of which requires its own information and possibly certification as well. So hinges, for example, they're critical things. The door closers. So the methodology that we've used is to say what risk, and this really came through from the HSE. So the HSE were sitting on our sessions, because this was part of the Golden Thread initiative, to actually identify what risk is a fire door mitigating. What risks do fire doors have themselves? So what do people do to a fire door to stop it from working, which is possibly one of the most important things to know. Then what information is required? So this was the deep dive of the information that that subject matter experts like Gareth, for example, would say, well, we need to know where it is. We need to know what its specification is, what its fire rating is. And, that's from a point of view of specification, construction, installation, and also then going on to maintenance and the like. So to be able to say, what do we need for that side of things? And then levels of competency that's required to carry out the work, and what sort of criteria. It might be BIM4Housing or whatever. And then how do we record changes? So so this was the industry's feedback, and we fed this back into the government, into the team at Deluxe, and that went into their thinking. And really, what we're doing here is, what's it about? It's to guarantee that things have been done in accordance with building regs, selecting the right products that satisfy specifications, recording what was installed, recording when products have been changed. And what we're trying to do is overcome this thing of saying, well, it'll be in the O&M, or it'll be in the BIM model, or it'll be in the Regulation 38 pack. If it's gone through building control, it must have been provided. So what we're really saying is that quite possibly isn't going to be the case. So what we're really trying to encourage people to realise is that they can't simply transfer risk, and the client organisations have got to hold the information to ensure risk is being dealt with. So what we've done within BIM4Housing over the last 4 years, we've got 6 working groups which meet every 8 weeks, and what they do is then determine what information is required to basically deal with a lot of the problems that we're having. And we then create work streams for carrying out the work. So we've got people working on data that have produced standardized data templates and standardized information requirements. We've done the same with processes. And one of the things that we're really pushing for is to try and make sure that everything is fully classified and coordinated. The fire safety work has been very significant. We've got a lot. For example, we've produced a guide to fire door inspections that has actually come out of work that's been done extensively within the NHS, but we've applied it to residential. But and we're doing the same at the moment for dampers and penetration seals. I'll show you an example of that later. And the same with carbon. and procedures. So what essentially we do is that mostly it's Teams meetings like this one, but we do this annually. We've got another one coming up in May at Digital Construction Week, where we pull together an in-person meeting. So that group there, for example, is the design group. There's a group on manufacturers, there's a group on operations, and we're really trying to get to the nub of what information is really needed by the subject matter experts, and then we're using that to then apply that to the gateways, because I don't think anybody else is really looking at things in that level of detail. It becomes an opinion, and if we can have something that's a bit more rigorous, it's going to make things a lot easier. And what we try and do is to provide a context in which people can understand why they're being asked the question. So, rather than saying, tell me everything you know, if you can provide somebody with a context, you say, a fire breaks out in this kitchen. What measures are in place to stop the spread of smoke? The likelihood is there's compartmentation. And so it's getting people to think about that, rather than have we done a fire door inspection, or have we done have the dampers been checked? The whole point is that unless the whole compartment works, there's an issue. And then what other measures are in place, like smoke control and detection? So, Andrea, from your point of view, the asset information, it's not just about the individual assets, it's how they are then performing to provide the protection that is needed to support the safety case. And one of the aspects of this is how, it needs to be digital, otherwise it's got to be checked, everything's got to be checked manually. And this is an example where there's a tick in the box to say that there's a fire stopping drawing, but actually it's illegible because whoever's created the drawing that went into the O&M hasn't realized that you need to make that scalable, because you can't make anything out there because they're all overlapping each other. So it's a tick in the box. There's a drawing of the fire stopping, but it's useless because it doesn't tie back to anything. So the important thing now is you've got to actually demonstrate that even if you don't have information, you've got to actually demonstrate that you've done something to find it. So broadly, where we're going with this is to have a situation where we can have confirmation that the client has got to confirm that this is the regulation, this is the updates in August, that they've actually received everything. So I was talking to Jarek earlier, and he was saying that he's got a project that a colleague has told him about, where it's an office building that's been open for 3 years, and they've realised that they don't have any certification on the emergency lighting for the building, and now they've got a major issue. They've got to try and track it down. So it's important that the clients are validating that and confirming that they've actually received what they're supposed to receive for Reg 38. So what we've tried to do is to make this a little bit more explicit, to say what information is actually required, and then we're going through the exercise of then trying to determine that. So that can go into Jarek's Miro board. Okay, that's all I was going to show. Is that helpful?
Resounding silence. That's because they got their mics off, George. They're talking into the muted mics.
I was going to say, yeah,
Gavin.
it was good to get that overview. So yeah, really appreciate that, and it's good to see how it how you bring it all together and network. So yeah,
Well, it's good.
thank you.
I think it's good for people to know. It's not just that you know, you get an invite to this meeting, but what's actually going out there in the wider group, because a lot of it is going to be of value to all of the people in this meeting as well. To know what it's good to know what resources we've actually got out there. As George said earlier, the contacts that people have made. You've got somebody to go to in a different field, and they're here, and it's not just a safe environment, it's also a trusted environment, and that's very, very important to us. Andrea.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say that for about 30 minutes in this kind of like this presentation, I was wondering if I'm the right person to be here, or should it be someone within the technical team and Place for People? And
absolutely not.
I've been involved in the Building Safety Act and trying to support Place for People to translate that in data. Okay, those requirements into data. And the bit that I've suggested to the group was the fact that we need to move into a more granular space of looking at data. So now we're talking about components and how we're actually maintaining the fire doors, not in the way that the asset systems have done it before, which is to say, I've got a block here, I've got a building here, and these are all the documents I've got, and that's compliance done, right? We need a more proactive, a better system in place to be able to cater for this. So the suggestion was that we would identify all of the components that are subject to the Building Safety Act, and then try to link them to their parents, be that a block, their communal areas, or the flat, or whatever it is that they are. So we can, create a system by which we maintain the data up to date, and it's also easy to extract and put within the safety case. Okay, there are significant challenges in doing that. One of the most significant ones have been that we're taking systems like NEC, for example, Northgate, right, that aren't really catering for that granularity, right? So the scalability, the bigger the portfolio you've got, the more granularity you add, the more issues you've got in terms of data. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So one of the things that we'd recommend is, if within the BIM world, and I appreciate that because you're working largely with existing buildings, you may not perceive that BIM is relevant, but it absolutely is, because BIM isn't about 3D modeling, it's about information.
Yeah.
And what we've got in the BIM world, which has been very well tested and developed over the years, is something called COBie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, COBie is a data schema, not a spreadsheet, which a lot of people think it is, which allows you to go down to that level of granularity, and also it allows you to manage things at the individual asset type level, and indeed the asset level. But you can then group things together because it's a relational database. So you're able then to say these assets are part of these systems, and the assets are located in these particular locations. So you've got the spatial context, but you've also got the ability to slice and dice the information in different ways. So you can then use that to find where that particular asset type has been used across a portfolio of 100 buildings. But you can also then drill down and say where's the individual asset that's been used in maybe a stairway. So by following that methodology, it means that we've got the opportunity to glue those things together. And from your point of view, we've talked about Origin as well, because you're just merging or taking over Origin, aren't you? So I can show you some of the examples that Origin have been doing in that particular regard. But I think that's a good way of looking at things.
Yeah.
Does that help? Is that helpful?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I know about Kobe, but as I said, we're really stuck at this point in terms of, you know, the old setup that doesn't really help for the new requirements.
Well, good job you're in the advisory group then.
Indeed.
George,
And talking not technically.
Nick.
Nick.
I'd just like to raise a caution. You know, Kobe has a very good way of helping you collect information, but it's not a tool for managing the asset going forward. It's a really important point that, I do a lot of training around Kobe, and someone came in, folded their arms, in a kind of passive aggressive. I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "Kobe stands for you can't operate a building in Excel," and he was absolutely right. Just to alert you that there is a new version of Kobe available, which is intended to be a vehicle for transferring asset information from one operator to another. So it's intended to include the operational records of when things were last maintained, etc., etc. That's called Kobe 3. But that's only really being discussed in the US at the moment. So yeah, Kobe 2 is great for data collection, and it introduces people very gently to the idea of schemas, but it's not an asset management tool as such. It's a data collection tool.
George?
I would absolutely agree. It's Kobe is information exchange standard. That's what it stands for, isn't it? The point is, though, the structure of the data that's in Kobe is exactly what can be used in applications going forward, and so
exactly.
It's no,
it's the suitcase, not the holiday.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I think that's positive. Sue, we've not heard from you. Are you there at the moment?
I am. Yeah, I've had a bit of a I've had to come back to South Africa, so I'm busy speaking to you from there at the minute.
Yes.
For personal reasons. But I am. I'm still dabbling on the edges of building safety, if you could do that half-heartedly. Actually, very interesting conversation. It would have been very useful, I think, if NEC had been kind of more open to progressing, being able to facilitate Kobe information in, you know, within their environment. When we spoke to them when I was at MTVH 3 years ago now, they said they were working on trying to find a way to kind of help us manage and deal with our Kobe information, and I still see nothing out of them. And then in terms of the sort of resource information, I just wanted to ask you guys if you were aware of I have a connection on LinkedIn. His name's Matt Hodges Long. I don't know if you guys know of him, and he's got a library that he's made available, a resource center for the Building Safety Act and a resource center for the fire safety regulations, which has been really useful. He's been very happy to just dish out the link and add people into it. So there's a repository of information in there, which I've found really, really useful. So yeah, I would say if you guys wanted to access that, maybe just connect to Matt and ask him to add you guys into his repository.
Yeah, absolutely. We've done a couple of joint events with Matt, actually. So yeah, we know him very well.
Yeah, I was with him about 2 weeks ago, actually, Sue. Yeah, so yeah, very much so. Good guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, shall we talk about the new group, George?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so there's just can you put the thing back up? So I think the general feeling of this meeting is that we should go forward and set up the subgroup. If any of you would like to put your name in the chat to say you'd like to be involved in that, please do so. But we'll be sending out invitations to all of you, obviously. But if you want to put your name in the chat now, if you're particularly interested, that would be great, because obviously you're the people we'll hit first. Now, just one little, right, so what, scroll down, where are we? Right, so what about timeline? What do you think, George? We've got, we're rammed with meetings for the next couple of weeks, aren't we?
Yes. But I do think it is something that is, you know, the
need to move
demand
on.
is going to be strong. One of the aspects of this would be, I think, you can see there we've got in there, that's I think largely come from Debbie, the evaluation of advisors' competence, because that can be, rather than name and shame people, it might be a useful thing within the trusted group to be able to identify where people are giving maybe incorrect advice, but help them by informing them, you know, bringing them in rather than criticizing them. I don't know what you think about that.
Anybody got any thoughts on that? If somebody doesn't speak, I'm going to pick on you.
I just wanted to say that I've done that CIOB level 6 building safety management course. You know, just in terms of like a review of what I thought, is that I thought it was really pretty good. It covered most things. I think, to be fair to them, it's difficult to put the content together when it's such a changing landscape. But, you know, I thought in general, it was a really good course, well delivered, and yeah, a great level of understanding of what we have to do.
When did you do it, Sue?
I completed it at the end of last year. So we kind of did it within our working day. We had lectures all morning on a Wednesday, and then we had assignments to do during our working week, which was extremely stressful, but we managed to all get it done. That was the other thing. We kind of did it with when I was still at MTVH, and we all helped each other and worked through it together, which was really useful. And yeah, I thought all in all, it was a very good course. I think there was some discrepancies around the marking, and funnily enough, I think that their competence around some of their lecturers' marking was questionable. But they seem to have ironed that all out now with you know, within themselves. I think we were the second cohort, so let's be fair to them. It was all brand new.
Excellent, very, very good. Right, Cliff, we haven't heard from you yet. What are your thoughts?
He's perhaps gone off to get a coffee.
I think he's hiding.
Kemi,
okay.
I see that you've just arrived, I think. I just saw Kemi arrive. Maybe she's not.
Yes, she popped on, didn't she?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, Sue, the reason I asked when you did it was that one of the people that was behind the setting up of that particular course for CIOB was Steve Coppin, who's one of our sort of experts in the whole contractual side of things. He used to be the director of health and safety at Arcadis. He's now freelance, but he's been wrestling with CIOB, and I think he eventually has given up in terms of some of the courses, because, like I say, he wrote the course, but I think they've changed it now. So
right. Yeah, I think they probably have. You know, I think a lot of the feedback from our group was that it was difficult because, you know, they were making references to the bill, and it had since been the Act. And, you know, there were lots of little nuanced changes that they hadn't kept up to date on. And I think it's very difficult for them because they've obviously got to put together a whole bunch of slides and lecture notes and questions and stuff. And with it constantly changing, it's very difficult. So I kind of felt their pain, but nonetheless, as a sort of a student who was paying, quite a lot for the course, I begrudged the fact that it wasn't completely up to date and current. And it's a little frustrating when they're teaching you stuff that is no longer relevant or has changed since they've told you about it. So I can kind of understand where he's coming from, but I think it will level out at some point. All of the changes will kind of start slowing down, and I think we're already getting there. So I think that what it did was give you some really interesting insights into what your thinking has to be around building safety cases and buildings as a system, and what the building safety manager's role as a critical friend. Some really useful, interesting stuff about how to review risks in a building and stuff like that, which I found invaluable.
Excellent.
Okay. Anybody else got anything more to add on what we've been talking about? Any questions on BIM4Housing itself? Okay, we've had a lot to absorb, I think, with those presentations. Has anybody else, George, have you got anything you want to add, and we'll wind up early?
I was just going to show what we've done in terms of the new publications.
Oh,
So,
sure, yeah, great.
So, for example, we've got the fire door inspection.
Are you sharing?
I'm trying to open it up at the moment. Actually.
Oh, sorry, no, just letting you know you weren't.
Sure. Bear with me 1 second. I just want to open up something else as well. Apologies. Okay. So we've got 2 publications that we've released. This is one that we quite a big team worked on this over the last year or so. Oops, crikey. And what we've done is we've put together. Be interesting Gareth's view on this, but we basically covered a type 1 inspection, a type 2 inspection, and a type 3. The difference between them is a type 1 inspection is what you do with a new door. A type 2 is what you do with an existing door. And then type 3 is the ongoing inspections. So this is something that is freely available to us, to anybody. The purpose of it is to try and have a more standardized way in quite some detail. You can see it's a 74-page document to actually go through the what the subject matter experts say should be checked. So hopefully you'll see that being of some value. And then these publications are that we've got 4 workshops tomorrow looking at the different aspects of certain questions that we've been dealing with. So how do we ensure how asset information is managed through the process? So again, we've had workshops on this, and this is the publication that's actually coming out from it. But we've got a meeting tomorrow to basically just finally refine and validate it.
Well, these are the points that people have raised on the questions. The tomorrow's meetings, and also in a couple of weeks' time, are to say, okay, fine, how do we actually do it?
Yeah. So those are just resources that are all available on the BIM4Housing website, which, if you've not looked at it, then that's it there. So the events that we have are all recorded, and then there's meeting notes region as well. So you can see what was covered. And at some stage, I think we're probably going to use some AI on these things. But, you know, for now, we've got this information here. So all of the meetings that we've had are recorded. So these are the 4 questions that we're covering tomorrow. So how do we make sure that building safety data is live rather than just a report? How do we prevent the incorrect design selection of fire safety products? How do we ensure that building services not being complete when construction starts is going to be addressed? And then the asset question that I just mentioned earlier. So across the top there, you can see the working groups. So if you wanted to join one of the working groups, the design working group or manufacturing or advisory, which is what we're doing now, we've then got the work streams that are covering different topics like fire safety, and we record all those meetings. And then we've got the publications that we were just talking about earlier. So any of these can be available. And the area that we're trying to grow is the black box. So the idea of the black box is where we can actually get people to feedback the information, and we tie it in with LinkedIn. So this is providing experiences of you know, what people come across and what they're learning. Right, that's me, Richard. Richard?
Sorry, turn my mic off. Well, I hope this meeting's been of value to you all, and I hope to see you all at the meetings tomorrow, George, the 4 questions meetings, or in the next couple of weeks. Other than that, we'll see you next time, and we'll be in touch on the new subgroup. So,
Awesome.
see you then.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Jack. See you later.
Thank you
Thanks.
all.
Bye.
Bye.